The notification lit up my phone screen at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday, October 8th in Seattle, right in the middle of closing a $450 million merger between two mid-sized pharmaceutical companies. I glanced down, expecting a final confirmation from legal on the indemnity clause. Instead, a photo appeared that rearranged my entire existence. It was a screenshot. A text message. But not just any text message. It was a picture of a clear blue digital pregnancy test, resting on the marble countertop of my guest bathroom. The background was unmistakable. I recognized the artisanal hand soap I ordered from a boutique in Vermont for $42 a bottle. The text underneath read, "We need to talk about college funds sooner than we thought, babe." My heart didn't stop. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't gasp or run out of the conference room in tears. That's for amateurs. That's for women who haven't spent the last 20 years in corporate mergers and acquisitions. I looked at the sender. Greg, home. Then I looked at the timestamp. 2:45 p.m. He thought he was texting Jessica. Or maybe bragging to a friend. But he had sent it to me. For exactly 3 seconds, my vision blurred. The world tilted on its axis. Then, the training kicked in. The cold, hard, reptilian part of my brain that had negotiated hostile takeovers and dissected balance sheets for a living took the wheel. I swiped the notification away, turned my phone face down on the mahogany table, and looked up at the sweating CEO across from me. As I was saying, I said, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "If you don't agree to the restructuring of the logistics department, the deal is dead. You have until 5 p.m. They signed at 4:52 p.m. I walked out of that building $1 million richer in commissions, and single. Though my husband, Greg, didn't know it yet. He had no idea that while he was playing house with his pregnant mistress in my guest bathroom, I was already initiating the due diligence phase of the most ruthless acquisition of my career, his total destruction. In 6 weeks, I wouldn't just divorce him. I would become his boss. And then, I would fire him. But let's back up. Because to understand how a man like Greg, a man who thought inventory management was a complex concept, thought he could outsmart me, you have to understand who I am. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 42 years old, and I am a senior M&A consultant for Sterling and Price, one of the most aggressive firms in the Pacific Northwest. People call me the Fixer. Or the Shark. Or, behind my back, the Ice Queen. I don't mind. Warmth is a liability in my line of work. Warmth gets you bad deals. I live in Queen Anne, Seattle, in a restored 1920s Craftsman that I bought 3 years before I met Greg. I drive a muted gray Audi A8 because flashy cars are for people who need to prove something. I don't need to prove anything. My bank account, which sits comfortably in the 7 figures excluding the trust, does the talking for me. My husband, Greg Vance, 44, is the regional sales director for Pacific Logistics, a subsidiary of the company I just helped acquire, though he didn't know that yet. He's the kind of man who peaked in his late 30s, handsome and a former college athlete who still runs 5 Burmese Chots way, charming enough to close a deal over a steak dinner, but fundamentally lazy. He thinks details are for support staff. We've been married for 12 years. 12 years of me managing our finances, planning our vacations, organizing his family's birthdays, and essentially running his life like a well-oiled corporation while he played the role of the fun husband. I thought we were a team. A partnership. A merger of equals. I was wrong. Looking back now, I realize the red flags were there. They always are. We just edit them out of the narrative because the truth is inconvenient. Like the way he started buying better suits 6 months ago. Not the Brooks Brothers off-the-rack he usually wore, but custom Italian wool from a tailor downtown. Got to look the part for the promotion, Ellie, he'd said, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. Regional VP is coming up. I need to dazzle them. Or the sudden interest in mentoring the junior staff. It's about legacy, babe, he told me over a glass of Merlot, my Merlot, an '09 Cabernet I'd been saving. I've got this new assistant, Jessica. Fresh out of college. Bright kid, but green. I'm taking her under my wing. Jessica. I should have known. The clitch was so loud it was practically screaming. The 23-year-old assistant. The mentorship. The late nights at the office, going over the quarterly figures. But I trusted him. Not because I'm naive and blinded by love, but because I assumed he was smart enough to know the cost of betrayal. I assumed he had done a risk assessment and realized that losing me the lifestyle I provided was a bad trade. My mother, Margaret Vance, would be disappointed in me. You see, my mother wasn't the baking cookies type. She was the first female vice president of her division at Boeing in the 80s. She smoked Virginia Slims, drank Scotch neat, and taught me how to read a contract before she taught me how to ride a bike. She passed away 4 years ago from aggressive pancreatic cancer. I sat by her bedside in the private hospice room which I paid for, holding her hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong, even at the end. "Eleanor," she whispered, her voice raspy. "Don't let them soften you." "I won't, Mom. Men." She coughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Men look for the soft spots. They look for the cracks in the armor. You show them nothing. You give them nothing you can't afford to lose." She pointed to the leather portfolio on the nightstand. "In there. For you." Inside was a check for $142,000. It wasn't her whole estate that was tied up in properties and stocks, but this was liquid cash. "That's your go-to-hell fund," she said, managing a weak smirk. "My mother gave me $500. I'm giving you leverage. Keep it separate. Keep it secret. And if a man ever tries to corner you, you buy your way out." "Mom, Greg and I represent." "Greg is charming," she interrupted. "Charm is cheap. Loyalty is expensive. Just promise me." "I promise." 2 days later, she was gone. I put that $142,000 into a high-yield trust account under my maiden name. I never told Greg. I told myself it was just honoring her wish, a superstition. Now, staring at the photo of the pregnancy test in my bathroom, I realized my mother hadn't been cynical. She had been prophetic. I went home that night at my usual time, 6:30 p.m. I parked the Audi in the garage next to Greg's leased BMW X5 which I made the payments on. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the kitchen. Greg was there, stirring a pot of risotto. He looked up and smiled that dazzling, boyish smile that had charmed me 12 years ago. "Hey, powerhouse," he said, walking over to kiss me. He smelled of expensive cologne Santal 33, a gift from me, and something else. Something floral. Cheaply floral. Like a body spray from a mall kiosk. "How was the merger?" he asked, handing me a glass of wine. I took the glass. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had just texted a photo of a pregnancy test to me by mistake, and hadn't even realized it because I hadn't replied. He must have realized his mistake and deleted it for everyone, or assumed it didn't go through. Or maybe, and this was the most likely option, he was so arrogant, so confident in his ability to manage his 2 lives, that he didn't even check who he sent it to. "It closed," I said, taking a sip. "We bought them." "That's my girl," he beamed. "Ruthless." "You have no idea," I said. He went back to the risotto. "So, I have some news too." "Good news." My heart did a slow, heavy thud. Was he going to confess? "Oh? The regional VP spot," he said, turning down the heat. "It's looking really good, Elle. I had a meeting with the director today. He said my mentorship program with the juniors is really paying off. They see leadership potential." He turned to face me, leaning against the counter, looking so proud of himself. "I think this is it, babe. Once I get this promotion, things are going to change. We can finally buy that vacation house in Cabo you wanted." I swirled the wine in my glass. I watched the red liquid coat the sides. "That sounds wonderful, Greg," I said. "When do you find out?" "Mid-October. Around the 15th. October 15th. The exact date the acquisition of his company would be finalized. The date Pacific Logistics would officially become a subsidiary of the conglomerate I was advising. "Perfect," I said. A small, cold smile touched my lips. "I have a feeling October is going to be a very big month for both of us." He didn't notice the tone. He never did. He was too busy tasting the risotto. "Oh, by the way," he said casually. "I need to go on a site visit this weekend. Portland branch. Some inventory issue. I'll probably stay overnight Saturday, be back Sunday morning." Portland. Where Jessica's parents lived. I knew this because he had mentioned the new assistant is from Oregon months ago. "Work never stops," I said. "Tell me about it." "But hey, gotta put in the hours for the big win, right?" "Absolutely," I said. "The big win." I finished my wine in one swallow. "I'm going to go change," I said. "Long day." "Okay, babe. Dinner in 10. I walked up the stairs, my heels clicking on the hardwood. I walked past the master bedroom, down the hall to the guest bathroom. I pushed the door open. It was clean. The marble countertop was empty. The pregnancy test was gone. But the artisanal hand soap me $42 Vermont soap was moved slightly to the left. And there, near the faucet, was a tiny, faint ring of water. Someone had set something down there recently. I opened the cabinet under the sink. Nothing. I checked the trash can. Empty. He had taken the trash out. How efficient of him. I looked in the mirror. Eleanor Vance, 42. M&A consultant. Wife. Fool. No. Not a fool. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the Margaret Vance Trust account. Balance, $152,438.12. Interest had been good this year. Don't let them soften you, my mother's voice echoed in my head. I looked at my reflection. The shock was gone. The nausea was gone. All that was left was clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity. Greg wanted a promotion? I would give him a promotion. He wanted to play corporate games? I invented the game. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years, but kept on speed dial for my corporate background checks. Maya Chin Investigations, a crisp voice answered. Maya. It's Eleanor Vance. Eleanor. It's been a while. Who are we destroying today? A CEO? A CFO? My husband, I said. There was a brief pause. Then, the sound of a keyboard clacking. I'm opening a new file, Maya said. Rate is the same. $250 an hour. $5,000 retainer. I'll wire you 10, I said. I want everything. Bank statements, texts, location history. And I want to know exactly who Jessica is. Consider it done. When do you need it? Yesterday, I said. But I'll settle for Friday. He's going on a business trip to Portland. I'll have a tail on him before he leaves the driveway. Good. I hung up. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my blazer. Then I walked back downstairs to eat risotto with the man I was about to dismantle, one line item at a time. I sat down at the table. Greg poured me another glass of wine. You know, he said, I was thinking. If I get this promotion, maybe we could. I don't know, think about expanding the family? He watched me closely. Testing the waters. Trying to see if I would be open to adopting? Or maybe he was planting the seed for when he eventually dropped the surprise baby on me? I smiled. It was the same smile I gave the CEO of the pharmaceutical company right before I stripped him of his stock options. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Greg, I said softly. Let's focus on the promotion first. I'd hate for anything to interfere with your career trajectory. He grinned. You're right. Focus. Eyes on the prize. Exactly, I said, raising my glass. Eyes on the prize. Little did he know, he wasn't the player in this game. He was the asset being liquidated. The next 3 days were a masterclass in compartmentalization. I went to work. I crushed a logistics meeting. I finalized the merger documents. And every night, I came home and played the supportive wife. I cataloged everything. If you're already hooked on Eleanor's cold calculation, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps the story reach more people who need to see a cheater get what they deserve. Red flag 1, the date night that wasn't. It happened 2 weeks ago. We were at Le Coin, a French bistro in Fremont that we loved. It was supposed to be our reconnect night, something I had scheduled because I felt him drifting. I was wearing a new dress, a silk slip dress in emerald green that I knew he liked. Or, he used to like. He hadn't even looked at me when we sat down. So, I said, breaking the silence over the appetizers escargot, which he usually loved. The merger is really heating up. I might be able to negotiate a signing bonus. He mumbled. He was staring at his phone, scrolling. Greg. The bonus. It could cover the bathroom renovation. Oh. Yeah. Great, babe. He didn't look up. Then, his phone buzzed. A text. His face changed. It wasn't the bored mask he wore with me. It lit up. A micro-expression of excitement that he tried quickly to suppress. Who's that? I asked, keeping my voice light. Just work, he said, flipping the phone face down. Inventory issue at the warehouse. At 8 p.m. on a Friday? Logistics never sleeps, L. You know that. He took a sip of his wine. Then, the phone buzzed again. And again. He looked at it. He looked at me. I have to take this, he said, standing up. It's the regional manager. Sorry. He walked away from the table. I watched him go. He didn't go to the lobby, where it was quiet. He went outside, to the patio. I could see him through the glass. He wasn't standing aggressively, like someone dealing with a warehouse crisis. He was leaning against the railing. He was smiling? No. He was laughing. He ran a hand through his high gesture he did when he was flirting. I sat there, alone, with my cooling escargot and my emerald dress. I told myself I was being paranoid. He's just relieving stress, I thought. He's charming the boss. That's his job. He came back 10 minutes later. He smelled like mints. Fixed it? I asked. Yeah. Just a mix-up with a shipment, he said. He didn't sit down. Hey, babe. I'm really sorry, but I actually have to go in. To the office. Just for an hour. They need my override code. Now? I asked. Greg, we haven't ordered mains. I know. I'm sorry. I'm the worst. He squeezed my shoulder. It felt performative. Rain check? I'll make it up to you. He dropped a $50 bill on the table like I was a mistress he was paying off for her time and walked out. I sat there for another 20 minutes. I finished my wine. I paid the bill. The 50 wasn't enough to cover the wine, let alone the tip. And then I drove home alone. Looking back, I know exactly where he went. He went to the inventory issue. Her name was Jessica. And she was probably waiting in her car around the corner. That night, when he came home at 2 a.m., he didn't come to bed. He slept in the guest room. Didn't want to wake you, he texted me the next morning. Liar. You didn't want me to smell her on you. Red flag 2, Wednesday morning. I accidentally knocked his jacket off the chair while getting dressed. A receipt fell out. The Flower Pot, Portland. A delivery order. Receipt date, Monday. Item, 1 dozen red roses plus teddy bear. Card ends in 4492. My cards end in 1102 and 5581. He had a secret credit card. Red flag 3, Thursday evening. He was in the shower. I checked his iPad, knowing he was sloppy with cloud syncing. He had logged out of iMessage, but he hadn't cleared his recently deleted photos. There it was. A selfie. Greg, in our bed, wearing his favorite Seahawks t-shirt. And next to him, a blonde girl who looked barely old enough to rent a car, wearing my silk robe. Timestamp, Tuesday, October 1st, exactly 1 week ago, when I was in San Francisco for a client dinner. I airlifted the photo to my phone. Then I deleted it from his recently deleted folder to cover my tracks. I stared at the girl's face. She was pretty, in a generic, unthreatening way. White eyes, pouty lips, messy bun. The kind of girl who thought assistant was a career path to wife. Jessica, I whispered. My phone buzzed. It was Maya. Maya, check your secure email. You're going to want a drink for this. I went downstairs to my home office, locked the door, and opened the secure Proton Mail account I used for sensitive deals. The subject line, report Vance/J.Miller. Attached was a PDF, 47 pages. I opened it. Section 1, The Assistant. Jessica Miller. 23, hired 6 months ago as Executive Assistant 2. Salary, $62,000. Standard is $45,000. Her resume listed her previous experience as barista and influencer. She was uniquely unqualified. Section 2, The Money. Maya had found the credit card. It was a Chase Sapphire Reserve, opened 8 months ago. Statements were mailed to a P.O. box in Bellevue. Monthly spend, $4,500. Transactions. Airbnb in Portland 6 weekends in the last 4 months. Baby RS multiple charges in the last 2 weeks. Tiffany & Company, $3,200 last month. A recurring payment of $1,200 to Venmo, J. Miller. Section 3, The Kicker. Maya had highlighted a section in yellow. Subject is pregnant. Estimated 10 to 12 weeks based on registry creation date at Pottery Barn. Kids under names Greg and Jess. Registry includes a $1,200 crib and a future CEO onesie. Future CEO. I laughed. A dry, harsh bark of a laugh that sounded strange in the quiet room. He wasn't just cheating. He was building a parallel life. Using our money because while he made a decent salary, my salary paid the mortgage and the investments, freeing up his cash for Baby RS to fund a restart with a younger model. He was planning to leave me. The college funds text confirmed it. He was probably waiting for the bonus from the promotion to serve me papers, thinking he could hide assets before the divorce. He thought he was clever. I looked at the calendar on my wall. Today, Thursday, October 10th, Saturday, his business trip to Portland. Monday, October 14th, the the Pacific Logistics acquisition closes. Tuesday, October 15th, the day he expects his promotion. I picked up my pen, the antique fountain pen my mother left me. It was heavy, cold silver. I had 4 days. 4 days to turn his promotion into his funeral. I started typing a new email. To Evelyn Crawford, ESQ subject, asset liquidation/hostile takeover. Evelyn. Clear your schedule for Monday. I have a case for you. It involves infidelity, dissipation of marital assets, and a very public termination. I'll bring the retainer in cash. Then I sent a second email. To hiring committee/board of directors, Pacific Logistics acquisition team. Subject, urgent recommendation regional sales leadership. Gentlemen. Regarding the post-acquisition restructuring, I have identified significant redundancies in the regional sales division. I strongly recommend an immediate audit of expense accounts and HR compliance before we confirm any leadership retentions. I will personally oversee this audit starting Monday. I hit send. The game was on. Friday morning. Greg was packing his bag for Portland. Gonna be a grinder of a weekend, he sighed, folding a crisp white shirt. Inventory counts are a mess. Might have to pull an all-nighter. You're so dedicated, honey, I said, sipping my espresso. Make sure you stay hydrated. And maybe, I don't know, take a break? I'll try, he said. He kissed me on the forehead. Love you, Elle. You're the best. Love you too, I said. He walked out the door. I watched through the window as he backed the BMW out of the driveway. As soon as he turned the corner, I moved. Phase 1, the locks. I called the locksmith I used for my rental properties. Jim. It's Eleanor. I need the locks changed. On the house. And the garage code reset. Yes, today. Before noon. Phase 2, the car. The BMW X5 was a lease, but it was in my name. I had signed for it because my credit score was 820 and his was recovering. I called the dealership. This is Eleanor Vance. I have a vehicle leased under my name, yes. I'd like to report it as being used by an unauthorized driver in violation of the insurance terms. I want to coordinate a repossession. No, not for non-payment. For breach of contract. I can tell you exactly where it will be parked in Portland tonight. I gave them the address of the Airbnb Maya had found on the credit card statement. Phase 3, the office. I drove to the Pacific Logistics headquarters. The security guard, Mike, knew me. Mrs. Vance. Here to see Mr. Vance? Actually, Mike, I'm here as a consultant for the new ownership group, I said, flashing my new ID badge that had arrived via courier that morning. Sterling and Price. I need access to the executive floor. And I need a list of all active keycards. Oh. Sure thing, Ms. Vance. I took the elevator up. The office was buzzing. People were nervous about the acquisition. They should be. I walked past Greg's empty office. It was messy. Papers everywhere. I walked to the desk outside it. Jessica? The blonde girl from the photo looked up. She was even younger in person. She was wearing a tight sweater and, was that my necklace? I looked closely. Yes. The vintage pearl pendant Greg told me must have fallen off at the opera last month. She was wearing it. Rage flared in my chest, hot and sharp. But I pushed it down. Don't react. Calculate. Hi. Can I help you? She chirped. She didn't know who I was. Greg had kept us very separate. I'm Eleanor, I said, extending a hand. From corporate audit. I'm just doing a spot check before the merger. Her eyes widened. Oh. Greg. Mr. Vance isn't here. He's in Portland. I know, I said. I'm not here for him. I'm here for the files. Just need to verify some expense reports. Won't take long. Oh. Okay. Do you need a login? No need, I said. I have override access. I spent 2 hours in Greg's office. I copied his hard drive. I downloaded his chat logs he had WhatsApp web logged in. I found the physical baby file in his bottom drawer, labeled Q4 projections. It was all there. The ultrasound. The nursery plans. A budget titled The Exit Strategy. Sell the house equity split. Move to Oregon. Start consultancy. He was planning to cash out on me. I took the file. Thanks, Jessica, I said on my way out. By the way, that's a lovely necklace. Pearls really suit you. She blushed, touching it. Oh, thanks. My boyfriend gave it to me. It's a family heirloom. I bet it is, I said. Take care of it. Things have a way of disappearing. I walked out. Phase 4, the preparation. Saturday and Sunday were spent with Evelyn the lawyer. We drafted the divorce petition. Grounds, adultery. Evidence, 47 pages of financial dissipation. The baby registry. The exit strategy document. Asset freeze. We filed an emergency motion to freeze the joint accounts on Monday morning, citing his exit strategy document as proof of intent to hide assets. He's going to be destitute, Evelyn said, reviewing the numbers. He has $12,000 in personal savings and $45,000 in credit card debt. If we block him from the house equity, he's got nothing. He has his promotion, I said dryly. Oh, wait. No, he doesn't. This is where it gets really satisfying. If you're ready for the aftermath, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss what happens next. Monday morning. 9 a.m. The acquisition closed. Pacific Logistics was now fully owned by Sterling & Price, my firm. And as the senior consultant who brokered the deal, I had been appointed interim director of operations to oversee the transition. Technically, purely technically, I was now Greg's boss's boss. Greg came home Monday night around 8 p.m. He looked tired but happy. He tried his key in the door. It didn't turn. He jiggled it. Tried again. He rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. I sat in the living room, in the dark, drinking tea. He called me. I watched my phone light up. Greg Mobile. I let it go to voicemail. He pounded on the door. Ellie? Ellie. The key isn't working. Finally, I walked to the door. I threw the deadbolt but didn't open it. I spoke through the wood. Go to a hotel, Greg. What? Ellie? What are you talking about? Open the door. I saw the baby registry, Greg. And the exit strategy. And the picture in my bed. Silence. Total, heavy silence on the other side of the door. Ellie, wait. You're misunderstanding. I can explain. You can explain it to my lawyer. Her name is Evelyn. You'll be served tomorrow. Ellie. Come on. Let me in. My stuff is in there. My laptop. Your laptop is property of Sterling & Price, I said. And since I'm the new interim director of operations for Pacific Logistics, I took the liberty of confiscating company property. What? What are you talking about? Go to a hotel, Greg. Use your baby RS card. I froze the joint accounts an hour ago. I heard a thud. Like he had kicked the door. UBTCH. You can't do this. That's my house too. Actually, I said, the down payment came from the Margaret Vance Trust. Commingled funds, sure, but I have a forensic accountant who says you've dissipated enough assets on Jessica to forfeit your share of the equity. Good luck in court. I walked away. He pounded on the door for another 20 minutes. Then, finally, I heard him leave. Since his BMW had been repossessed from the Airbnb driveway in Portland on Friday night, he had to take an Uber home, costing him $300. He presumably walked to the main road to call a cab. I slept like a baby. But the real show? The real show was Tuesday. The day of his promotion. I arrived at Pacific Logistics at 8 a.m. sharp. I wore my execution suit, a charcoal Armani number with a silk lapel that cost more than Greg's car. I had my hair pulled back. I looked like what I was, the owner. I sat at the head of the conference table in the main boardroom. The CEO of Pacific Logistics, soon to be former CEO, Mark, sat to my right. He looked nervous. So, Eleanor, Mark said, wiping his forehead. You mentioned a restructuring of the regional sales division? Yes, I said, opening my file. I've reviewed the performance metrics. They're underwhelming. Specifically in the Northwest region. I believe we have significant liability issues regarding HR compliance and expense account fraud. Mark paled. Fraud? I'll handle the termination personally, I said. It's a family matter, after all. At 9 a.m., the door opened. Greg walked in. He looked rough. He was wearing the same suit from Friday, wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red. He clearly hadn't slept well at the Motel 6. He stopped when he saw me. Ellie, he croaked. Then he saw Mark. He straightened up, trying to compose himself. Mark, he said, forcing a smile. I didn't know my wife would be joining us for the promotion announcement. He actually thought I was there to celebrate him. The delusion was breathtaking. Mark didn't smile. He looked down at his papers. Sit down, Greg, Mark said quietly. Greg sat. He looked at me, confusion warring with anger in his eyes. Ellie, we need to talk after this. About the house. You can't just. Mr. Vance, I interrupted, my voice ice cold. This is a formal business meeting. Please address me as Ms. Vance or Director. Greg blinked. Director? As of yesterday, I said, sliding a document across the table, I am the interim director of operations for the new parent company. Which makes me your direct superior. Greg stared at the document. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. What? No. That's not possible. You're a consultant. I said. Now I'm the boss. And we're here to discuss your performance. I opened the folder, the 47-page one Maya had compiled. Item 1, I said. Expense account irregularities. Can you explain why the company credit card was used to purchase a $1,200 crib from Pottery Barn Kids on September 12? Is that a business expense? Greg's face turned a color I can only describe as deadly ash. That was a mistake. A clerical error. Really? And the 6 weekends in Portland? Were those also clerical errors? Because your GPS logs show you were at a residential address, not the warehouse. I tossed the photos of him and Jessica on the table. The ones from the cloud. Item 2, I continued. Gross misconduct. Having a sexual relationship with a direct subordinate. Jessica Miller. Your executive assistant. Mark gasped. He actually gasped. Greg? Is this true? She's barely out of probation. Greg stood up. This is a setup. She hacked my phone. Mark, you can't listen to her. She's just a crazy, jealous wife. Sit down. Mark shouted. Greg sat. I'm not doing this as your wife, Greg, I said softly. I'm doing this as the woman who just audited your department. You have exposed this company to a massive sexual harassment lawsuit. You have embezzled funds. And you have proven yourself to be fundamentally incompetent. I stood up. I walked over to him. I leaned down, close enough to smell the stale coffee on his breath. You wanted a promotion? I took the regional VP nameplate that was sitting on the credenza prepared for him and picked it up. I dropped it into the trash can. You're fired. For cause. Effective immediately. No severance. No benefits. And we will be pressing charges for the embezzlement of company funds, $14,000 in false expenses. Greg looked at me. His eyes were wide, wet, and terrified. Ellie, please. I have nothing. You froze the accounts. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Jessica has a nice apartment, I said. Oh wait. No, she doesn't. Because I fired her 10 minutes ago too. His jaw dropped. You fired Jess? She was unqualified, I shrugged. And she was wearing stolen property. Security is escorting her out as we speak. UBTCH, he whispered. Security. I called out. 2 large men in blazers walked in. Please escort Mr. Vance to the exit, I said. Do not let him return to his office. His personal effects will be mailed to him. Eventually. Greg was dragged out of the room, shouting. I'll sue you. I'll take half of everything. You'll see, Eleanor. You'll see. As the door closed, silence filled the room. Mark looked at me. He looked terrified. I had no idea about the embezzlement, Eleanor. I swear. I know, Mark, I said, smoothing my skirt. That's why you're keeping your job. For now. The aftermath, the slow burn. The divorce took 8 months. It was brutal. But not for me. My lawyer, Evelyn, was a shark in human skin. She argued that because of the embezzlement and the dissipation of assets, spending marital funds on the affair, Greg was entitled to exactly 0% of the house equity. The judge agreed. Especially after we played the voicemail Greg left me drunk one night, threatening to burn the house down. Greg ended up with his clothes mailed in trash bags, $45,000 in credit card debt, a criminal record. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor theft to avoid jail time for the expense fraud. No job. In our industry, word travels fast. No one hires a thief who sleeps with assistants. Jessica left him 2 weeks after the firing. Apparently, her love for him was directly tied to his future CEO status and his ability to buy her things. Once the credit cards were declined and they were living in a cheap motel, she realized she needed space to find herself. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents in Portland. I kept the house. I kept the Audi. I kept my trust fund. And I kept my job. In fact, I made the interim title permanent. I liked being the boss. The epilogue, 5 years later. It was a rainy Tuesday in Seattle, much like the one where I found the photo. I was running late for a flight to Tokyo. I was flying first class, obviously I was the COO of the entire logistics group now. I stopped at one of those generic coffee kiosks in Terminal B. I needed a double espresso. Next, a voice called. I looked up. And time stopped. The man behind the counter was wearing a green apron that was too tight around the middle. His hair was thinning. He looked tired. Defeated. He had a name tag that said Greg Trainee. It was him. He looked up. He froze. He stared at me. He took in my tailored Chanel suit, my platinum status luggage, the evident glow of a woman who is winning at life. Then he looked down at his own apron. Ellie, he breathed. It's Ms. Vance, I said pleasantly. Double espresso. Black. He moved automatically, his hand shaking slightly as he tamped the coffee. I heard you made COO, he said, not meeting my eyes. I did. I'm trying to get back into sales, he mumbled, steam hissing from the machine. It's been hard. The background check. Yes, I said. Criminal records are tricky like that. He put the cup on the counter. It's on the house, he said quietly. For old time's sake. I looked at the cup. Then I looked at him. I reached into my purse and pulled out a $20 bill. I dropped it in the tip jar. No handouts, Greg, I said. I pay for what I want. You should know that. I picked up the coffee. By the way, I said, turning to leave. How's the baby? He winced. Use visible pain. There was no baby, he said, his voice cracking. She lied. It was a trap. To get me to leave you. I paused. A fake pregnancy. Of course. Well, I said, taking a sip of the espresso. It was bitter. Perfect. Looks like it worked. I walked away, my heels clicking on the terminal floor. I didn't look back. I had a plane to catch, a company to run, and a life that was entirely, completely, gloriously my own. My mother was right. Tears are expensive. But revenge? Revenge pays dividends. And I never forgot the look on his face. If this story satisfied that little part of you that loves seeing karma delivered, hit that subscribe button. I post stories like this every single day. And if you've ever had to work with an ex, tell me in the comments. How did you handle it? Did you take the high road, or did you go full Eleanor Vance? See you tomorrow. Stay strong, stay smart, and never let them see you bleed.
My name is Sloan Mercer, and I'm 34 years old. 2 months ago, my boyfriend looked me in the eye across my living room and told me not to embarrass him. He said it the way you'd talk about parking instructions or the dress code, calm, efficient, like he'd practiced it enough times that it stopped sounding cruel in his head and started sounding reasonable. Just please, Brandon said, straightening his cufflinks in the reflection of my TV. Try not to make it weird tonight, okay? These people are way above your level. I remember the way those words hung in the air, heavy and ridiculous at the same time. Above your level. Like we were talking about a video game, not my entire sense of worth. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I fiddled with the clasp on my necklace and watched him check his hair one more time, the way he always did before important nights. Brandon Cole worked in corporate communications for a fast-growing tech company. His job was to smooth things over, spin bad news into exciting pivots, and make nervous executives sound human on stage. He was good at it. He knew how to perform. We'd been together for 18 months. Long enough for our families to know each other's names, for some drawers to get unofficially shared, for people to start asking when we were moving in together. Long enough for me to believe that, whatever our differences, he respected me. He'd grown up with country club summers, prep schools, and a mother who called his boss darling at fundraisers. I'd grown up in a small Midwestern town where my dad patched the roof himself and my mom taught 3rd grade. I didn't resent his background. If anything, I used to find it a little charming and a little foreign. We joked about it, or I thought we did. I worked my way through a state university, then slowly built a career as an environmental sustainability consultant. My clients were companies trying to reduce their carbon footprint, improve ESG compliance, or at least pretend to, without breaking the law. It wasn't flashy. People's eyes glazed over when I said life cycle assessment at parties. But I was good at it, and in my quiet corner of the world, my name meant something. Brandon knew what I did. He just never seemed all that interested in the details. At his work events, I was Sloan. She does environmental stuff. Before he pivoted the conversation back to whoever had the biggest title in the circle, I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there because I loved him. The night everything shifted was a Saturday in early September. Brandon had finally been invited to a dinner party at the home of Graham and Elise Whitaker. The Whitakers were a big deal in his world. Graham was a venture capitalist with a focus on innovative tech solutions. Elise sat on the boards of 3 nonprofits and was the kind of woman who could raise $1 million over brunch. They hosted selective gatherings at their estate just outside the city. Invitations were whispered about more than posted. Brandon had been angling for an invite for months, maybe years. When the creamy envelope with their monogram showed up in his mailbox, he'd practically vibrated with excitement. "This is it," he'd said, waving it in front of me. "This is the room I need to be in." He spent the next week obsessing over it. New suit, new tie, haircut. He booked a detailing for his car even though we had valet. He asked me 3 separate times what I was planning to wear. "I'll figure it out," I said each time. Apparently that was the wrong answer. The day of the dinner, I chose a simple black dress that fit well, a blazer that made me feel like myself, and low heels I could stand in for hours. Professional, clean, understated. I'd worn something similar to conferences where executives twice my age took notes while I spoke. When I stepped out of the bedroom, Brandon looked me up and down with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Not admiration, not even neutrality. Disappointment edged with something like resignation. "That's what you're wearing?" he asked. I froze for half a second, suddenly aware of every inch of fabric on my body. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Is there a problem with it?" He hesitated, then forced a strained smile. "No, it's fine. It's just, never mind." The never mind felt like a small, sharp thing dropped between us. We left my apartment and got into his car. He insisted on driving because he knew the way. Translation: he didn't trust my parallel parking near rich people. For the first 10 minutes, the music filled the silence. Brandon tapped the steering wheel in time with the beat, eyes flicking between the road and the navigation. Then he turned the volume down. "I need you to do me a favor tonight," he said, still watching the road. "Okay," I replied, already bracing, though I wasn't sure for what. He took a breath, lips pursing like he was about to deliver constructive feedback in a performance review. "Just try not to embarrass me, all right? These people are way above your level. They're not going to care about soil or emissions or whatever it is you do. Just smile, be polite, and let me handle the conversations." There it was, above your level. I stared at him. "Above my level?" I repeated carefully. He winced at my tone, but didn't take it back. "You know what I mean. These are serious people with serious money and connections. I just don't want you to, I don't know, go into too much detail about your work or your background. It doesn't really fit this crowd." "My background," I said. "You mean the part where my parents don't summer in Italy?" He sighed, annoyed I'd made it about class, when that was exactly what he'd done. "Can you not twist my words right now, Sloan? I'm already stressed. This is a big night." I turned my face toward the window and watched the city thin into expensive suburbs. I could see our reflection in the glass, his jaw tight, my shoulders rigid. Here's what Brandon didn't know. 3 weeks earlier, Graham Whitaker had called me. His family office was looking to pivot more seriously into sustainable investing, and someone in his circle had recommended me. We'd had 2 long calls and a video meeting where he'd grilled me on carbon markets and greenwashing risks, then chuckled and said, "You're exactly what we need." At the end of that call, he'd said, "We're hosting a small dinner soon. I'd like you to come. It'll be a good chance to talk in person, and I'd love to introduce you to a few friends who are behind in this area." He'd paused, then added, "Bring someone if you'd like, partner, friend. It's casual." I'd mentioned, casually, that my boyfriend had been excited about possibly meeting him at some event someday. Graham had laughed. "Well then, it'll be nice to put a face to the name. I'll have Elise add him to the list." I hadn't told Brandon any of this, not because I was trying to teach him a lesson or set up some dramatic reveal. Honestly, I just didn't like talking about projects before contracts were signed, and Brandon had never cared about the details. When I started explaining the Whitaker call, he'd glanced at his phone halfway through, said, "That's cool," and changed the subject. So I stopped sharing. We pulled up to the Whitaker estate at 6:45 p.m. It was excessive. A sweeping drive lined with trees that had probably been shipped in full grown. Manicured lawns. a house that technically qualified as a home but looked more like a boutique hotel. Valet took the car. Brandon checked his reflection one more time in the window, smoothed his hair, straightened his tie. He turned to me. Remember what I said, okay? Just follow my lead. I didn't trust myself to answer, so I just stared at him until he looked away. A server opened the front door and led us through a gleaming foyer, past a curved staircase and out onto a wide terrace overlooking the grounds. Strings of lights were woven through the trees. About 30 people milled around with drinks that probably cost more than my shoes. I scanned the crowd automatically, not for status, but for familiarity. I spotted Graham near the bar, talking to a small cluster of people. Even from across the terrace, he had the relaxed posture of a man used to being the center of attention. Brandon straightened beside me, his networking smile sliding into place. He adjusted his grip on my waist like I was an accessory. "Okay," he murmured. "When we go over, let me—" Graham's eyes found mine. His whole face lit up. He excused himself mid-sentence from his group and strode straight toward us. Beside me, I felt Brandon inhale, readying his polite, polished greeting. "Mr. Whitaker," Brandon began, extending his hand. "Thank you so much for—" Graham walked right past his outstretched hand and grabbed mine instead. "Sloan," he said warmly, shaking my hand with both of his. "Finally. We've been waiting to meet you in person." I watched Brandon's hand remain suspended in the air for a beat before he slowly dropped it to his side. "It's good to finally meet you too," I said, managing a calm smile. "Thank you for inviting us." "Are you kidding?" Graham said. "Having you here is the entire point of tonight." He chuckled. "Well, one of the points. Elise has been talking about your proposal non-stop." Only then did his gaze flick to Brandon. "You must be Brandon," he said. "Sloan mentioned you might be joining us. Glad you could make it." Brandon swallowed. His carefully prepared speech had nowhere to go. Thank you for having us," he managed. Graham clapped him once on the shoulder, friendly but distracted, then turned back to me. "Come on," he said. "Let me introduce you to Elise and a few others who are desperate to corner you about carbon offsets before dinner." He said it loud enough that people nearby turned to look at me with sudden interest. I glanced sideways at Brandon. His face had gone a shade paler, his jaw tight. The expression said everything. He had walked into this house believing he was the one being evaluated, the one on trial, and suddenly realized he was just +1. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. Graham led us to a small group where Elise Whitaker, a graceful woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a generous smile, greeted me like an old friend. "So you're the woman trying to drag my husband into the 21st century, she said. "I've been reading your proposal. It's infuriatingly persuasive." We all laughed, and just like that, the evening shifted. People introduced themselves to me first. A woman named Monica Lane, who ran an investment fund, asked if I was taking new clients. A man named Noah, who owned a green energy company, monopolized me for 10 minutes about supply chain audits. Elise peppered me with questions about greenwashing and reputational risk. Every time someone said Sloan across the terrace, Brandon flinched a little. He hovered close, laughing too loudly at my jokes, touching my arm whenever another man spent more than a minute talking to me, agreeing emphatically with points I made that he absolutely did not understand. 2 hours earlier, I'd been beneath this crowd. Now I was the reason they were here. During dinner, an elegant sit-down affair with place cards and more forks than I knew what to do with, I ended up seated between Elise and Noah. Brandon sat 4 spots down, next to a woman who worked in insurance and seemed more interested in her phone than the conversation. I could feel his eyes on me every few minutes, trying to catch snippets of what I was saying. Halfway through dessert, Graham stood and tapped his glass. "Thank you all for coming," he said, voice carrying easily. "As some of you know, Elise and I are shifting how we think about our investments, taking sustainability and long-term impact more seriously. We've been fortunate enough to connect with Sloan Mercer," he nodded toward me, "who many of you have had the pleasure of speaking with tonight. She'll be guiding us through this transition, and I suspect some of you may be calling her after this evening." Polite laughter, scattered clapping. A few people turned to study me, like a product just featured in a commercial. I felt my cheeks heat, but I kept my expression composed. Across the table, Brandon looked like he might be sick. Later, when we said our goodbyes, Graham pulled me aside near the door. "Let's get something on the books for next week," he said. "I'd like to finalize terms and loop in a few partners." "Absolutely," I said. "I'll have my assistant send some times." He smiled. "And bring Brandon to dinner sometime. Just the 4 of us. I think Elise would enjoy getting to know him properly. I glanced toward the entryway where Brandon stood, shoulders pulled in, watching us with a mixture of anxiety and confusion. Sure, I said, that sounds nice. The drive home was silent for the first 15 minutes. The quiet between us wasn't comfortable or neutral. It was the brittle kind, all sharp edges and unsaid things. Finally, Brandon spoke, his voice tight. Why didn't you tell me you knew Graham Whitaker? I watched the headlights streak along the dark road ahead of us. You never asked about my work, I said softly. That's not fair, he snapped. You specifically didn't tell me about this, He gestured vaguely, about all of that. I didn't tell you because the project isn't finalized yet, and I don't like talking about things before they're real, I said. And because every time I try to explain what I do, you change the subject. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry about what I said earlier, he muttered. In the car, I was nervous. It didn't sound nervous, I replied. It sounded honest. I didn't mean it like that. You told me those people were above my level, I said, keeping my tone even. You told me not to embarrass you. Those aren't words that slip out by accident, Brandon. They come from somewhere. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. I was just stressed, he insisted. You know how important nights like this are for my career. And you assumed my career was less important, less impressive? That I was just some girl who talks about dirt, who you had to manage. That's not what I think. It is, I said quietly. It's what you've always thought. Every time you introduce me as Sloane, she does environmental stuff and move on. Every time you pick out what I should wear so I don't stand out. You've been managing me like I'm a liability. He exhaled sharply, the sound halfway between a scoff and a sob. You're blowing this out of proportion. I turned back to the window, watching our reflections flicker in and out of view as streetlights passed overhead. I didn't say anything else. I just stared at the darkness and listened to the sound of my own heartbeat, realizing that something between us had quietly, permanently shifted. I didn't break up with him that night, but I knew with a bone-deep certainty that whatever we'd had before that car ride was gone. For a while after the Whitakers' dinner, Brandon acted like nothing had happened. If anything, he seemed lighter, almost giddy. The next morning, he made coffee in my kitchen like he always did, humming as if we hadn't had a conversation in the car that split my view of him in half. He handed me a mug, kissed my forehead, and said, You were incredible last night. I stared at him over the rim. Thanks, I said. He took a sip of his own coffee, leaning against the counter. I mean it, Sloane. I don't know. You just fit in. Everyone wanted to talk to you. Graham clearly thinks you're a big deal. Do you? I asked. He blinked. Do I what? Think I'm a big deal. He laughed, a little too quickly. Of course I do. Don't be weird. He slid his phone out of his pocket and began scrolling. The conversation evaporated like steam. That became the pattern for the next week. Brandon saying the right words on the surface, and me feeling the hollowness underneath. What changed, really, wasn't how he treated me when we were alone. It was how the rest of his world suddenly started treating me. By Monday afternoon, my LinkedIn looked like it had been hit by a minor storm. Connection request. Brandon's coworker. Another request. Someone from his extended network I vaguely recognized from a rooftop mixer months ago. A friend of his boss. A woman who once gave me a tight smile and turned her back when I tried to join a conversation. Now they all wanted to connect. I clicked through a few profiles. Communications director, investor relations, strategic partnerships. Different titles, same hungry eyes in their profile photos. Brandon texted me between meetings. You're blowing up, he wrote, followed by 3 rocket emojis. Everyone's talking about how you had Graham's attention the whole night. I stared at the message for a while before responding. I thought they were above my level. He didn't reply to that part. Instead, later, when we were on the phone, he said, You should add them. You never know where it leads. At the end of the week, there was a happy hour with his team at a trendy bar downtown. In the past, I'd gone and spent most of the evening stirring my drink, while people talked around me about campaigns and clients I'd never heard of. This time, I felt eyes tracking me as soon as we walked in. Brandon had his arm around my waist, holding me a little tighter than usual, like I was something fragile or valuable, or both. Sloane's here, I heard someone murmur. A woman in a green blazer, Amelia, I remembered, made a beeline over. The last time I'd seen her, she'd nodded in my direction and then turned back to her conversation about some award ceremony. Sloane, hi, she said now, smiling like we were old friends. Brandon told us about the Whitaker dinner. You're working with them? Brandon's hand tightened around my waist, pride flaring in his expression. Yeah, he said before I could answer. Graham basically built the night around her. He's bringing her in to overhaul their entire sustainability strategy. Amelia's eyes widened. Wow, that's huge. Are you taking on more clients? Her tone was casual, but I could see the calculation there. She held a cocktail in one hand like a prop, body angled toward me, leaving Brandon just slightly outside the circle. I gave her a polite smile. Possibly, I said. Depends on the fit. People who had barely acknowledged me at previous events drifted over as the evening wore on. They asked about ESG metrics and carbon offsets in the same breath they used to reserve for gossip about promotions and brand deals. It should have felt validating. Instead, it made my skin crawl, because the before and after was too stark. Same face, same resume, same work. The only variable that had changed was that someone they respected had publicly stamped me as important. Brandon seemed to love it. "This is what I've been telling you," he said later that night when we were back at his place, as if the last year and a half had been one long sales pitch. "You're underselling yourself. You should use these connections." "Funny," I said, taking off my earrings in his bathroom mirror. "A couple weeks ago you told me not to talk about my work at all." He appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "I told you I was stressed," he said. "Can we not keep relitigating that?" I apologized. "Right," I said softly. "You did." He stepped behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. Our eyes met in the mirror. "You were incredible," he repeated. "I'm proud of you." His voice was warm. His grip was possessive. For a second, I tried to let those words soak in, to pretend that this was what I'd wanted all along. His pride, his admiration, his willingness to say out loud that I was impressive. But the memory of his voice in the car kept replaying underneath it, a quieter audio track. "Try not to embarrass me. They're above your level. Don't talk about your background." Pride that arrives only after public validation isn't pride. It's opportunism in nicer clothes. 2 weeks after the Whitaker dinner, Brandon came over to my apartment with takeout and a familiar kind of excitement in his eyes. "I have news," he announced, setting the bags on the counter. "Good news, or I volunteered us for something news?" I asked, easing off my shoes. "Good for you, good for me, good for everyone," he said, ignoring the warning in my tone. "There's a sustainability and innovation conference next month. Huge event. Graham is doing a keynote. Guess who just got us tickets?" I opened the fridge, staring at the shelves, even though I wasn't getting anything. "You got tickets?" "Well, technically my company did," he said. "But I told my boss we should definitely go. It's perfect. You'll be there in case Graham wants to introduce you to more people, and I'll get to be in the room with half the people I've been trying to meet for years." He was so transparent he might as well have been glass. "I wasn't planning on going to that conference," I said. His smile faltered. "What? Why not?" "Because I'm not presenting," I said. "And I already have meetings with Graham and his team booked that week. I don't need to sit in a crowded ballroom to hear him give the polished version of what I already read in his brief." Brandon stared at me like I'd just admitted I didn't believe in Wi-Fi. "Are you serious right now? This is a huge opportunity for both of us." "Is it?" I asked, turning to face him fully. "Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like an opportunity for you to walk me around like a credential." "That's not fair," he said, bristling. "I'm trying to support you. I want people to see how brilliant you are." "You wanted those same people to not know I existed 2 weeks ago," I reminded him. "You told me I was going to embarrass you, that they were above my level." "Brandon, which version of me are we bringing to this conference? The liability or the golden ticket?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration leaking into his voice. "Why are you being like this? I said I was sorry. I've been asking about your work, trying to understand it more. I've been introducing you differently." "I've noticed," I said. "You went from she does environmental stuff to she works with major funds like the Whitakers in record time." "Isn't that what you wanted?" he demanded. "For me to appreciate what you do?" "Yes," I said. "I wanted you to appreciate what I do, not who I know. There's a difference." He grabbed one of the takeout containers and ripped it open, even though we hadn't set the table yet. "I can't win with you," he muttered. "I try to be proud of you, and you twist it into some kind of insult." I watched him for a moment, the way his jaw clenched, the way he stabbed his fork into the noodles like they'd personally wronged him. "Brandon," I said quietly, "be honest. If Graham hadn't praised me in front of all those people, if the Whitaker dinner had been just a nice night with good food, would anything about the way you talk about me have changed?" He looked up sharply. "Of course it would have," he said. "You're making this a test. Like I have to give the right answer, or I fail you." "It's not a test," I said. "It's a pattern. You were embarrassed by me when you thought I was harmless background noise. You're proud of me now because I turned out to be useful. That's not true, he said, voice rising. I've always respected you. Respect doesn't sound like try not to embarrass me, I said. It doesn't tell someone to hide their background because it doesn't fit the crowd. It doesn't manage their clothes and their conversation topics so they don't mess up your big night. His chest rose and fell quickly. He looked at me like he didn't recognize the version of me standing in front of him. You're holding a grudge, he said finally. You're punishing me for one bad moment. No, I said. I'm finally listening to it. He shook his head, laughing once in disbelief. Unbelievable. We ate in near silence after that, the clink of forks and the hum of the fridge filling the room, where easy conversation used to live. At one point, he tried again. Look, he said softer. I messed up. I was scared that night. I've worked my whole life to get into rooms like that. I didn't want anything to go wrong. That doesn't mean I don't respect you. I held his gaze. Then why did you only start acting like you respect me after everyone else did? He didn't have an answer for that. He just looked away. Later, after he left, I sat alone at my small kitchen table, staring at the half-empty takeout containers and his lingering fingerprints on my glass. In the span of 3 weeks, I'd gone from wondering whether he secretly thought I was beneath him to knowing exactly how conditional his respect really was. And once you see that line, where someone's admiration starts and ends, it's almost impossible to unsee it. Before the Whitaker dinner, the idea of breaking up with Brandon felt dramatic, unnecessary, like burning down a house just because one window was cracked. After the dinner, the cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fault lines. And 3 weeks later, the house finally collapsed. But the truth, the breakup didn't start with a fight. It started with silence. A long, slow, suffocating silence that settled into the space between us like fog. It lived in the pauses between texts, in the way our conversations felt like PR statements instead of real thoughts, in how careful we both became, him not wanting to say the wrong thing, me refusing to pretend nothing had changed. One night we were making dinner at my place, pasta, something simple, when he said, too casually, Graham mentioned grabbing coffee next month. Maybe we could all go together? I didn't even look up from the cutting board. Why would I bring you to that meeting? He froze, a piece of broccoli half cut under his knife. So I can meet him, he said. Build rapport. He's a huge connection, Sloan. That's exactly the problem. What does that mean? It means you're not trying to understand my work, I said. You're trying to network through me. His jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. Is it? Every time you mention Graham now, you're talking about your opportunities. Not mine, not our relationship, just your access. He dropped the knife with a sharp clatter. Do you hear yourself right now? I'm trying to support you. No, I said, finally meeting his eyes. You're trying to leverage me. His face flushed. Why are you being so hostile lately? I said I was sorry. I've done everything you asked. I started asking about your work. I brag about you to my team now. I don't want you to brag about me, I said. I wanted you to respect me, before the Whitakers made it fashionable. That hit him. I saw the words land like a blow. He turned away, bracing his hands on the counter. So what? He said quietly. You're never going to forgive me? One mistake and I'm the villain forever? It wasn't one mistake, I said. It was the truth you let slip. And once someone tells you what they really think, you can't pretend you didn't hear it. He spun back toward me. So what, you're ending this? I don't know, I said honestly, but I don't recognize the version of us that exists now. He stared at me for several long seconds, breathing hard, and then the anger drained from his face. He looked scared. Sloan, he said, voice breaking. Please don't throw this away. I love you. My throat tightened. I believed he meant it, but I also knew love wasn't the issue anymore. Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, habit, and I could see the notification reflected in the glass backsplash behind him. It was from someone he worked with. A message preview. Did you get her to introduce you yet? Brandon went still. Slowly I said, introduce you to who? He locked the phone. Too fast. Nobody. It's not just work stuff. Let me see it. No. That one word, sharp, defensive, was the final confirmation I didn't want, but already suspected. He'd been planning it, coaching his colleagues behind the scenes, positioning me like a stepping stone he just needed permission to walk across. My stomach went cold. Brandon, I said quietly, I can't do this. His face crumpled. Sloan, please don't do this. I was stupid, okay? I shouldn't have said what I said in the car. I swear I've changed. I'm trying. But it was too late for trying. Something had snapped inside me, not from anger, but from clarity. You didn't suddenly respect me, I said. You just realized other people did? And you adjusted. That's not growth, that's opportunism. He stepped toward me, reaching. Sloan, don't go. Don't end this. I backed away. No, this already ended. We're just finally saying it out loud. He stared at me, breathing hard, hands trembling like he wasn't sure what to hold on to. And then very softly he said, "You'll regret this." But the only thing I regretted was not seeing it sooner. That night, I packed the sweater he kept at my place and left it in a neat folded stack by the door. He texted me twice, long paragraphs turning into frantic half-sentences, but I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up alone. And for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. A month after the breakup, my life looked completely different. The Whitaker Project didn't just go well, it exploded. Graham introduced me to 3 other funds, 2 CEOs, and 1 nonprofit director who practically begged me to take them on. I hired an assistant, moved into an office that didn't smell like old carpet, and upgraded my laptop for the first time in years. My calendar stopped having blank spaces. My bank account finally looked like it belonged to an expert in her field. But the biggest shift wasn't professional. It was personal. I met Eli Turner at a community sustainability workshop Graham's wife had asked me to visit. Eli was a middle school science teacher. Funny, curious, a little awkward, and the first man in years who didn't look past me while talking. He loved every messy, nerdy corner of my job, asked follow-up questions, lit up when I explained things. Our first date lasted 4 hours. Our second lasted 6. And he introduced me to his friends like this. "This is Sloan. She's amazing." Not, "This is Sloan. She works with important people." Just amazing, as a human, as herself. I didn't realize how starved I'd been for that. 6 weeks after the breakup, I ran into Brandon. It was at a professional mixer downtown. He was with a woman in a red dress who looked exactly like someone who would appear on his company's branding materials. Sleek, confident, polished. He saw me from across the room. His face shifted. Surprise, then embarrassment, then something I didn't have a name for. Something like longing. I gave him a polite nod and turned back to my conversation with Eli, who was animatedly describing the chaos of his 8th grade science fair. That night at 11:46 p.m., Brandon texted me. "It was good to see you. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I really did learn from what happened between us. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate you when I had the chance." I stared at the message for a long moment, and then I put my phone down and went to sleep. No reply, no second thoughts. Some lessons don't need discussion. They just need closure. 2 weeks later, I was having lunch with Graham at a restaurant near his office when he asked, almost casually, "How's Brandon doing? Haven't seen him around." "We broke up," I said. Graham nodded once, unsurprised. "Elise didn't think he was right for you," he said. "She said he seemed more interested in who you knew than who you were." I sat with that for a moment. It was strangely comforting to know someone else had seen it too, long before I dared to. We finished lunch, talked next steps, signed contracts, moved forward with a future I never would have had if Brandon hadn't said the quiet part out loud that night in the car. Funny how clarity arrives. Sometimes like a whisper, sometimes like a wrecking ball, and sometimes like a man you love saying, "Try not to embarrass me," right before the world proves him catastrophically wrong. I'm grateful I learned the difference between conditional respect and real respect at 34, not 44 or 54 or too late. And I'm even more grateful that the person who underestimated me the most is just a footnote in a story that turned out bigger, softer, and brighter than anything I expected.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment in the story has touched your heart, brought you some reflection, some emotion, and hope. Thank you for taking the time to experience it with us, and hope that each next story will always accompany you on your life journey.